We're going to talk about tools now, and tools are really the gardener's best friend. And when you're choosing tools, it's important to think about the kind of tools that you're going to get and also the quality of tools. In terms of quality, it's recommended that you buy the highest quality tools that you can afford for a couple reasons. One is if you take care of them well, they're really going to last a lifetime. The other is that they're going to feel better in your hands. They're going to be more effective tools to get the job done. And hopefully that'll mean that you'll be outside more often using your favorite tools out in the garden. We're going to start with primary tillage. So that's how do you prepare soil to plant vegetables. Here we are, we've got a space. Some cover crops are still kind of holding on here towards the end of the winter. And primary tillage is all about fluffing up the soil and trying to introduce air to it such that the roots are able to get down into the soil quickly. So the tools that are going to be preferred for that include these two. This is a spading fork and this is a garden spade. Both of these are short handle versions. There also are longer handle versions for folks who are taller or who don't like to work with the shorter tools. What I'm going to do first is spread out a little bit of compost between every crop, or maybe at the beginning of the season. It's recommended that you maybe put about an inch or anywhere from an inch to a quarter inch of compost onto the soil and to spread it out. And now with my digging fork, what I'm going to do is get it down into the ground by pushing it and then step back and pull it back like that. So it's a rocking motion, and all we're trying to do is fluff up the soil as best as possible. I'll move forward another 6 inches here. Do the same thing, rocking backwards. If you do this ergonomically, bending my knees a little bit, it feels pretty good on the body. So generally what we recommend is that folks do that in one direction across the length of the bed, and then turn at a 90-degree angle and do it again. All we're doing is loosening the soil and fluffing it up. We're not turning the soil over, just using the fork to introduce air to mix in the compost, and if you've added fertilizer, you'd also be mixing that in at this time. So that's the digging fork. The spade can also be used just like the fork in terms of loosening up the soil like that, but also comes in really handy for edging a bed. So making a nice clean divider between where you're growing your vegetables and where you're standing for your pathways. So typically if you use a string line, you can get a nice straight edge of your bed, and you're able to go down the length and have a nice clean edge distinguishing your pathway from your vegetable garden bed. After you've done your primary tillage with these tools, the other main tool you'll use for soil preparation is a hard rake, just like this. And with a hard rake, what you can do is chop up any of the clods that are there. You're also maybe raking out debris, rocks, sticks, things like that. You can also use the back of it and drag the soil nice and evenly. And you're creating a beautiful bed for transplanting or for direct seeding your crops. Soon enough, you're going to also have to be thinking about weed control in the garden, and there are different choices for that. These tools here are called chopping hoes, and the idea is with these cover crops or with these weeds, I can basically do a chopping motion like this, break it up. This has a nice aggressive angle, so I'm able to not use a lot of muscle energy to chop up the material in the ground, but it's really very efficient in removing sod or other debris from the surface of the soil. So I'm able to pull and pry like that, scrape away any weeds or debris that's growing on the surface of the soil, and make it so that I can get in there and prepare my bed like that over there. Eventually, let's say we've prepared the seed bed and we water it, pretty quickly weeds are going to grow into that area, especially once the soil starts to heat up. So the other main tool for weeding that you might consider is a scuffle hoe like this. This is a triangular hoe. It's made out of a tractor disc. It's nice and solid. It's got great bevels on it. And with this tool, notice that I'm standing up. And imagine really small weeds about this big, maybe 2 inches or so, that grow maybe after about 2 weeks of, after we water, a week and a half, 2 weeks, Then I could use this tool to basically just scrape the surface. It's much easier to kill weeds when they're really small, standing up like this. Whereas when the weeds get bigger, you're gonna have to bend over and get down and chop things out with smaller hand hoes like this, which are really useful tools for getting between your rows. Let's say this is a row of carrots right here. I can get nice and close and do close quarter weeding with these kinds of tools, but it's also fairly inefficient because I'm down here, I'm crouching. It's not as comfortable on the body as if I were up here and skimming across the surface with this hoe when the weeds are nice and small. Once they get bigger, you have to get in there and get a little more aggressive with the hand tools. Then the last tool I'd like to introduce here is the hori knife. This is going to be your best friend. You can keep it in a holster on your hip right here. This is used as your trowel, so you can transplant with it. It's also a measuring device. It's 1 foot long, so you can lay out your spacing of your rows 12 inches apart like that. It's got a serrated edge, so you're able to cut the bottoms of herbs and other perennial plants that you might want to use. And then it's really effective for popping out weeds. So let's say just right over here, I'm able to get down in and doing a pull and pry motion, able to get even tough weeds like dandelions out relatively easily. The most important time to think about weed control is early in the crop's growth cycle. It's really about the first 3 weeks or 4 weeks. If you are diligent and aggressive about weeding, your crops will get a leg up and be able to outcompete the weeds, and then you'll get a better harvest in the long run. If you buy nice gardening tools, you'll really want to make sure that you protect your investment, and good tools will really last a lifetime if you take care of them well. So number one, with this particular tool, the metal is nice and thick and there's a good bevel on it. So it's reasonably easy to sharpen by putting it in a vise and using a mill file like this, going towards the tip and sharpening it, and then taking the burrs off the backside at the end. The other main thing to do with tools is on a regular basis, maybe even every time you use them, when you pull them out of the dirt, to use a metal brush to get all of the dirt and the rust off of the tool. This one wasn't super well cared for last year. There's a little bit of rust still on it, but nonetheless, it's a nice solid tool that's going to last a long time. When you are using a file in a vise or in general, you want to make sure to use safety glasses. I've heard stories of shards of metal getting in people's eyes without using the glasses, and this would be particularly true if you're using a grinder or any electrical sander or grinding device. And another good practice with gardening tools is maybe during the winter or in the fall after you've finished using the tools for the year, is to use some linseed oil, to put that on a rag and to rub it down all the metal, and to also rub down the wood handle. And that way you're helping to lubricate the metal, getting the rust out of it a little bit, and then also getting some oil onto the handle to help to minimize the splintering that would occur. It's good as new.